Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have back in the studio with us today David Kupelian. He's an author, and he also is an editor with WorldNet Daily, and he's the author of a book that you got to read. It's called The Snapping of the American Mind. I can't say enough about this, put out by WND Books, and it's a must-read, called The Snapping of the American Mind, Healing a Nation Broken by Lawlessness, Government, and Godless Culture. And he nails it. Good to see you, bud. How are you?
I'm great, Perry. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, before we get into two articles you've written, give a little plug for WorldNet Daily. You guys do a wonderful job. It is a remarkable website. You were telling me it's the largest Christian content website out there.
Right. The largest Christian content website in the world without, frankly, even trying, because that's not primarily what we are. We're a news website.
Yeah.
But the news media, as most people know, have gone insane today. The Washington Post is frequently comparing Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler.
Right.
Hitler killed 11 million people. Okay. So the trust in the media is down to, I think it's 7% in the recent Gallup survey. So we have an alternative media today, new media. It's the internet, talk radio, shows like this. And so WND, WorldNet Daily, is a part of that. It's one of the largest independent news sites in the country. But it also, because the mindset, the worldview behind most of the people there is Christian. Most of them are Christians, including myself. It also happens to be the largest Christian content website in the world. So we think that's pretty cool.
I just can't say enough. It should be one of the ones that you go to every day, WND.com.
Well, I do.
Yeah. Well, you write some great articles, David, and I wanted to highlight a couple of these today. The one that I've been kind of intrigued the most about, Trump, Clinton, and the lesser of two evils, foolishness. And I have to say, here's one of the Christian pushbacks. If you have two evils and one's lesser than the other, at the end of the day, you still have two evils, so I'm not going to vote for any of them. And you respond quite forcefully to that concept in your article.
Right. Well, the great British evangelist last century, or 19th century, Charles Spurgeon said, "Of two evils, choose neither." So people quote that. And you know, if you can label something as evil, it's kind of what follows is, well, don't choose it. But this is just playing with words. Look, we're a broken world, okay? Yeah. We all are broken, okay? If I said, Perry, do you have any evil in you at all? Okay, I'm sure you would say, yes, I do. Yeah. This is what sin is, okay? We all have sin. That's why we need salvation. This is kind of a core Christian notion, right? Okay, right. So none of us is perfect. Ronald Reagan, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln had some evil or sin in them. So when we say the lesser of two evils, it almost traps you into saying, I'm not going to choose either one because they're both evil. But another way of saying that is that one is more good. If I said, Perry, are you going to choose the greater good, the candidate that has the greater good? You say, well, of course, okay? But if I turned it around and say, well, what about the you know, if they're both evil? Well, I don't want to choose anything that's evil.
Right.
So, and if we really had Stalin and Hitler running for president, which we do not, yeah. Okay, and if it was truly a case of that both were equally evil, okay, then I agree. There's reason to stay home and say, I'm in this world, but I'm not of it, and I'm not going to participate. But to look at the current election, okay, between Trump and Clinton, and to conclude they're both equally evil, okay, now it's not so much an issue of the lesser of two evils argument. It's more a matter of delusion, because there's no way a rational person can look at one candidate who promises to continue everything we're doing right now, to allow as many people from the most dangerous parts of the world as possible to come into our country, to continue to regulate and tax and to kill jobs, to continue to do everything basically that, you know, what, 3/4 of the country says we're on the wrong track. One candidate says, I'm going to continue, but faster on that track, okay? The other one says, we're going to change, okay? We're going to lower taxes. We're going to stop regulation. We're going to allow for energy independence. We're going to stop bringing terrorists into the country as fast as possible, and so forth. There is a very clear difference between the two candidates. So somebody who makes the case that these are equally evil, okay, I say respectfully there's something seriously wrong with their perception.
Wow. Okay, so Christians do get caught up in this. They really do, and they don't participate. I mean, if you go back to just 2012, David, the numbers are raw. We didn't show up. We registered but didn't vote, let alone those who were eligible to register didn't register. You add all those numbers together.
I mentioned that PolitiFact did a poll of 2012, the last presidential election, and 42% of evangelical Christians did not vote. Okay, now these are people who presumably believe in the values of the founding fathers, and the values that how many hundreds of thousands of Americans fought and bled and died to protect.
Right.
And somehow they cannot find it in themselves to go to the polling place on election day, or even early voting, or even by mail in Oregon,
right,
and vote for the better candidate. Okay, that is, and you say, well, why is that? Okay, honestly, somehow their emotions have gotten in the way, okay? Because this is a common sense thing, okay? We have two candidates. You pick the better candidate, you vote for him. Otherwise, you're saddled with the worst, the worst candidate, and you are condemning your children and your friends' children to grow up in a country that you're bequeathing to them a different country than the one that your parents gave you. It's not fair. Okay, so we have this duty. It's a very simple and easy thing to do. It's not like going off to war and fighting and getting your limbs blown off. You go and you vote. And yet we have people who something goes on in their mind and in their emotions that persuades them they can't. And if I had to distill it down to one thing, it's like they're resentful. I don't like either one of these people. I'm not going to vote. Okay, and that is, pardon me, immature, infantile thinking. And I explain it in one of these two articles. In fact, I interviewed, because I was never in the military, but I happened to be honored to have as a friend Patrick Henry Brady, who is considered the most decorated living American veteran. He was the president of the Medal of Honor Society. He won. He received the Medal of Honor for doing absolutely heroic things that we don't have enough time to describe, but he saved 5,000 lives in Vietnam, let's just put it that way. And he described to me, he says, yes, in war, every single day you are having to choose the lesser of two evils. When we bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we killed about 230,000 men, women, and children. But had we not done that, we would have condemned about 10 million Japanese to death and about 400 to 800,000 Americans to death, because next in line was the planned Allied invasion into the mainland, into Japan and all the islands. We were going to go for a full-scale invasion, and the Japanese, under their leadership then, were sort of jihadist mindset, you know. They were just wired into full-scale war, you know, to the last man. That was their mindset. They were insane at that time. And so had we not done this incredible shock and awe demonstration that just basically exorcised the demon, so to speak, out of their war effort, then this is what this is why historians say bombing those two cities was morally and tactically the acceptable, correct thing to do. We saved lives. That was a choice of the lesser of two evils, okay? If we say, no, I don't like either one of these. If we do this, these people will die. But if we do this, these people will die. Mama, I'm going home. I don't want to do either one.
Yeah.
Okay? That is, forgive me, that is the thinking of people that say, oh no, I don't like either one of these candidates. I'm going to vote for the the guy who favors pot, you know, the libertarian candidate, or the Evans, somebody nobody's ever heard of before. Or I'm going to write in, Mitt Romney says he's going to write in his wife's name. Okay, his wife is not running. Okay, we're going to have one of these two people, and one is clearly better than the other, and we need to face that and stop being babies.
All right, boy, you bring up so much here. Let's look at this. I want to say this carefully. The Christians, the faith community, not voting one way or the other, has given us 8 years of what we got. We sat out in 08, we sat out in 12. The primary reason sitting out in 12 for the evangelical was that Mitt Romney was a Mormon. And that threw another wrench into the situation. Now we got two candidates that are clearly different. And the one that people may be struggling with has selected as his vice president, who got up during the convention and said, I'm a Christian, I'm a husband, and I'm a Republican, in that order. I mean, we've never been that close to the White House with that kind of a confession, and yet Christians are still struggling.
It's not only Mike Pence, it's all the people surrounding Donald Trump. You have, you know, Ben Carson. Ben Carson is one of the coolest Christians that you're going to find on the scene, and he's a guy. He's a he likes to quote Proverbs. What is it? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. He's a guy who says, God led me to run for president. Okay, I didn't end up being the candidate, but God led me to go and advocate for Donald Trump. That's just one person. Pence is another one. But Trump is surrounding himself, his team. He's going to have a cabinet, okay? He's going to have advisors. He's going to have a whole huge team of people that help him. It's not a one-man job to be president of the United States and commander-in-chief. And the people he's already assembling there are people you look at and say, yeah, I feel really comfortable with having these people run the country. Whereas if you took at on the other side, Hillary Clinton Tim Kaine is a lefty. He masquerades as a moderate. He's a far lefty. And all the other people that she has advising her are people, they're old communists, and you have the person who probably become the chief of staff of the White House, Huma Abedin, who's a longtime advocate for the Muslim Brotherhood. Both her parents strongly involved with the Muslim Brotherhood to this day, or her mother is anyway. It's a stunning contrast. There's no lack of contrast for people to look at and evaluate.
All right, let me take a break here. The question I'll leave you with, and we'll come back. Are we close to betraying our country by not showing up to vote? Some say, and Trump has said, I don't know if he knows that he said this, but to me it resonated almost prophetically. This is our last chance to stop the United States from going over the edge. David Kupelian's with us from WorldNet Daily. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Focus Today, and what a delight to have in the studio with us today, David Kupelian. He's an author, and he's also one of the editors, and you'll see a lot of his articles on WorldNet Daily. And I tell you, it's one of the websites you got to go to, worldnetdaily.com, and the largest Christian content website in the world. But in addition to that, and mostly to that, it's one of the largest news websites in the world where you can go and get real news. And by the way, his latest book is a must-read. It's called The Snapping of the American Mind, Healing a Nation Broken by Lawless Government and Godless Culture. And I would suggest that you get a copy of this book and read it, and go to WND Books and get a copy of it. Look for it in the bookstores as well. You know, I've been reading again, David, Francis Schaeffer's The Christian Manifesto. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And I think we get so caught up in the everyday things that we forget the 30,000-foot view of the big picture. And we as a culture, and we as a faith community, has slowly slipping. And we've let a few things go, we've compromised, and now we're in this mess, and we're screaming and hollering that it's happened, and yet we are somewhat to blame, if not the blame. And now we're faced with the possibility of betraying our country, excuse me. And some people would say, you know, God and Scripture support what's happening here, and so let's just let it happen. because we're hastening the return of the Lord. He's coming Friday at 4, you know. I don't say that to be smart, but there is a critical point in where we are right now in this election cycle. It would be horrible if the faith community got tagged with another failure.
Yeah. I got an email the other day from somebody who says, I'm pro-Trump all the way, but I hope Hillary wins the election. That sounds insane, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it'll hasten the second coming of Christ. Okay. Now, that's a kind of really extreme thing to say. I don't lay that on most Christians, but I tell you there are a lot. I had a whole chapter in my first book, The Marketing of Evil, that covered this, okay? And it was the issue of saying, this is all meant to happen. It's all in the Bible. It's all in the book of Revelation. Let it happen. Get out of the way. I'm going to heaven, and, you know, to hell with everything else. I'm putting it a little crudely, but intentionally, because it's fundamentally a selfish way of looking at things. We're not meant to, we are meant to, you know, if you see a little old lady falls down on the street and cars are coming, you're going to help her up and help her get across the street. Even if the end of the world comes the next day, okay, the farmer is going to be out in the field harvesting, even if that afternoon is the end of the world, because we're not meant to know when that is, for one thing, and we're also meant to do right and live unto God and help and love our neighbor. But I'm really glad you brought up this issue about that we are all responsible in some part for the brokenness of our country. People want to complain about the candidates. Why can't I have somebody that really represents me and what I stand? Well, you know, Jesus is not running for president of the United States. You've already got him. You've got everything that you need from him, okay? We have flawed candidates. Donald Trump and Hillary are both flawed, as you and I, if we were running for president, we would be flawed, and people would be pointing those flaws out, you know. But the fact is that we cannot be so self-righteous as to ignore the fact that we are partly responsible, okay? Even if we are, you know, righteous Christians now and not, you know, lost in gross sin or however you want to call it, okay, we were not always that way. There was a time for most of us, okay, where we did wrong, we acted immorally, we took drugs, we got impatient with our children. Even that, you're impatient with somebody, you're injecting something wrong into them, and that affects them, and they go and they take that out on somebody else, okay? We have been part of the brokenness of our world. So we can't be so, you know, I don't like, Donald Trump used to build casinos, you know, and he dissed, you know, Ted Cruz's wife, and he said that his father he knew Lee Harvey Oswald or something. Knock it off, okay? I'm not defending the worst things that Donald Trump has ever done, but the fact is we have the candidates we have, okay, because we are a very broken country. We have 3,000 abortions per day, 3,000. That's the same number of people that died on 9/11. We just marked the 15th anniversary of 9/11. 3,000 little babies every single day are aborted in these nice, clean buildings. We say, oh, you know, safe, legal, and rare. We turn our eyes to this killing. And we have, you know, we have like 40 or 50 new genders. We have this total sexual anarchy. In every way, we are ignoring the Sermon on the Mount and the Ten Commandments. I say we. I mean, as a society, our laws, our culture, everything reflected. And yet, still, 75% of us Americans self-identify as Christian. So there is something wrong. We have not just an unchristian, but increasingly anti-Christian culture and laws and government and values and all the rest. We have to take some responsibility on some level. And I'm not saying let's beat ourselves up, but let's have at least a little bit of humility to say that when God gives us, okay, here we are, we have a stable country with the same constitution for 235, 40 years, and now we have two candidates. Let's pick the better candidate. There is goodness in Donald Trump, okay? I don't know if there is or not in Hillary. I'm not going to condemn her. I don't know where she's going when she leaves this world, okay? But right now, just taking her at her word, at what she says she'll do, she will destroy the country, because it will be 4 more years of Obama. We already have 94 million people out of the labor force. I don't have to recite all statistics that my friend Hannity does every night, but it's awful, okay?
It is.
And she says, I'm going to continue doing this, letting people in from the most dangerous Muslim countries. I'm going to let them in five and a half times more at a higher rate than Obama wants. And Obama is already, you know, just doing as much as he possibly can. So to any rational person who says, we cannot have this. We cannot have this.
But David, how did we get to the point where you can have somebody with all of these scandals? And look, the average American now is beginning to see through this, that there is a massive corruption going on with this candidate across the board. And you can't just blame it on her, but the system that has allowed it to occur. And she becomes the candidate, and she could become president of the United States. So somewhere in here, we people of hate have got to find ourselves on our faces before God and say, oh, God, forgive us. This has happened under our watch.
We allow it. Look, we're watching protesters right now in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Right.
They're taking over. They're you know, turning cars over, doing the same stuff we saw in Baltimore and Ferguson and everywhere. Why does that happen? Because we let it. I saw Rudy Giuliani on TV last night. He says the first person that's out there on the street that's doing this, they're in Rikers. Okay, they're off the street. The next one, he's in Rikers. The next one, he's in Rikers, in prison. Okay, and on and on and on. And then pretty soon they get the idea they can't do that. Okay, that is why the murder rate in New York City when he was mayor went down from 2,500 to 500. Okay, and that's saving black lives and other lives, okay? So, but my point is that we allow it. You say, how can Hillary and Bill get away with crime? We allow it. We watch the FBI, the DOJ. We watch law enforcement get away with it. It's an objective fact that Hillary Clinton has done things that have landed other people behind bars. That is just simply a fact. We watched the head of the FBI explain that she had basically violated U.S. espionage laws. Espionage laws, that sounds serious, doesn't it? Okay. We had, you know, I keep hearing Donald Trump points out that she went and she shredded, you know, tens of thousands of emails after they were subpoenaed.
Right.
I look over at my wife and say, honey, that has to be illegal. You have documents that are subpoenaed, and then you shred them.
Yeah.
That sounds really illegal. But this, you know, I have a more recent article called "Will We Elect a Criminal to the White House?" And I go there and very quickly lay out the entire litany of the crimes going back. I didn't even go to Arkansas, but starting in the White House. I was on the Barry Farber show last night, and Barry Farber, who was in his 80s, did not know that when the Clintons left the White House, they stole hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff, and they had to return $28,000 worth of furniture and art and other stuff. That's a fact. Go Google it. Anybody who thinks I may be wrong here, okay? They had to return this stuff. And so they are constantly grasping. That's a word that's commonly used with the Clintons. Grasping for more power and money. You know, half of the people that met with Hillary Clinton during her first 2 years as Secretary of State paid the Clinton Foundation to meet her. That really sounds like pay-for-play corruption. You know, Perry, 4 out of the last 7 governors of Illinois have gone to prison. Most recently, Rod Blagojevich, but 3 of the others, 4 out of 7, you're batting more than 500, have gone to prison for this kind of stuff, corruption. So we're not used to thinking of it in terms of presidential candidates, but it does happen with governors and others, but somehow, and we don't have time to discuss it, but for some reason, the Clintons have gotten away with it, and the media and the establishment allows them. But it doesn't mean that we have to put them back in the White House.
Okay, and our own responsibility in letting our elected officials know what we really do think and feel is part of the equation. I want to say to our viewers and listeners, you got to get these 2 articles. You can go to worldnetdaily.com, Trump, Clinton, and the Lesser of Two Evils, Foolishness. In other words, he's hitting right between the eyes if you're thinking that way. And the other one is How Not to Betray Your Country this coming November. And let me encourage you, you have to get a copy of this book. David has done his homework on this. The Snapping of the American Mind. There's a picture of it on the screen. Healing a Nation broken by lawless government, a lawless government, and a godless culture. He nails it. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Perry.
You're an inspiration. Keep up the good work, okay?
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back.